I don't want a $2,000 bill a month. I really don't. Welcome back to Wine and Chill. I'm Stephanie, your favorite recovering lawyer, and every month, once a month, we discuss what's going on with student loan forgiveness and the progress I've made towards paying off my six-figure student loans. All right, for those of you that are new, everything is always retroactive. So this is September's student loan update. So these will be the amounts that were paid or not paid in August. But before we get into that, let's get into the agenda. What I paid in August or didn't pay. Student loan repayment officially starts in a few days on October 1st. 8 Advantage sent me, that's my student loan service provider. They sent me an email saying my payment is October 20th. So everyone starts sometime in October. You should have received something in email or in the mail, mostly email, saying what your actual payment date is. And because student loans are from going to school, we've talked about this a few times. Unfortunately, school book bans are still continuing in my home state of Florida. Florida is such a chaotic place. Shout out to everybody from 305 all the way live from Miami, because we don't claim the rest of Florida, but it's happening in Miami as well. So there's that. We're specifically also going to talk about some of the members of Congress and the House of Representatives from the Republican Party trying to block Biden's student loan SAVE plan. We talked about the SAVE plan in last month's video. There are some pros, there are some cons. So go ahead and watch that if you haven't watched it already. And then lastly, we'll be talking about student loan refinancing. All right, so what I paid, or this month for the first time in 3 years, what I didn't pay. So in August, I usually make my student loan payment at the end of the month. So I have it set to at least $500. In the month of July, I paid $1,000. My goal is to get back to my pre-full-time content creation life. Back when I used to work in corporate, and I used to be giving them a couple $1,000s a month. That's my goal. So what had happened was, in August, I was outside. It's summer. It was summer, and I was enjoying the end of summer. And I really didn't realize what day it was. So when I went to make my payment, I realized that it was September 1st. And that is the first time in 3 years that I've missed a payment. In 3 years, I've been making payments this entire forbearance. My starting balance, if you're new, was $304,680 and 17 trifling cents. With $75,000 of those dollars is just interest, aka money I did not borrow. And I cannot say that enough times, especially right now as we talk about student loan repayment kicking in a couple days. So I didn't make a payment in August, and I was gonna make like the last minute payment on September 1st and be like, hey, let me just count this towards August. And I said, why? Why be bothered? Clearly, I had other things to spend the money on. Clearly, truthfully. And just a preview for October student loan repayment video, I did make a very large payment in September, about $2,500. I still have a couple days left in September, so I might give them another $500 to get that up to $3,000. So that'll be the largest payment I've made all year, either way. But yeah, honestly, I think subconsciously, I've been just trying to enjoy what was left of no interest student loans. Student loan interest kicked in on September 1st. You can easily find your student loan interest, that's the amount that it's accruing, on a daily basis, depending on what your student loan service provider is. So mine is 8 Advantage. If you log on to 8 Advantage, if you also have 8 Advantage, you can go under on the left-hand side. I'm pulling this up as we speak so I can walk you through it. I used to have Fed Loan. Fed Loan sold me off to 8 Advantage, unfortunately. If you go on the left-hand side to Tools and Requests on 8 Advantage, there will then be a section called Interest Estimator. So you set the days, the number of days accruing to 30. That's the average amount of days in a month. It will calculate that for you. Mine monthly interest is now at $830.50 trifling cents. Lord. I'm not going to lie. We usually talk about the feelings. How are y'all feeling? How am I feeling? How are we collectively feeling having paid these student loans? At the end, and we will, and how I'm feeling is anxious. Lots of anxiety. I have paid an estimated in 3 years $154,294.63 hard-earned pennies, which leaves my remainder to be the same remainder as last month at $161,773.97 trifling cents. Whew. Deep breaths. I'm not going to lie. Having the interest kick back in has raised my anxiety like through the roof. Truthfully, I've been like come to terms with it for what it's worth, having paid them for 3 years consecutively, large sums of money. Even $500 that I was paying throughout this year is still a decent amount of money. My payment this month of $2,500, a decent amount of money this month, as in September, not August. And I've jumped the gun, and we're going to talk about the feelings now. How are y'all feeling? I would like to know. Also, it always brings me a lot of joy, and hopefully it brings y'all joy that watch it as well. If you scroll through the comments, there's always at least 1 or 2 people that have either A, received student loan forgiveness or have paid off their loans when we do these videos. So congrats to y'all in advance. I'm really happy for you. And I hope I get there soon enough, because the level of anxious that I'm feeling, your girl is about to get a couple jobs. A couple more jobs. Truthfully, because I just need to get rid of it. I'm tired of it. The thing about the interest is, because the interest is compounding, so mine $830.50 a month, you have to pay that amount of the interest plus on top of that to reach the principal. That's a large payment, which is why I'm going to be refinancing my loans one at a time. Before we get into that, student loan payment is officially starting in October. You should have received an email. If you didn't receive an email, reach out to the Department of Education so that way you can find out who your student loan service provider is. They are all required to send you an email 30 days in advance of your payment. Today, as of the filming of this, it's September 26th. So everyone should have received an email. If you didn't receive an email, please reach out to the Department of Education. Do not ignore it. One of the things that we discussed last month about the SAVE plan, which is the new plan that doesn't go into effect until July 2024, is during this 1-year period, essentially, according to the Biden administration, they are going to have an on-ramp of payment. So according to the Biden administration, if you miss a payment, that will not negatively impact your credit score. However, the credit bureaus have now gone online and said, I don't know who told him that. Not us. We don't give a damn. There is a lot of conflicting information. It is best to just make the minimum payment at the very least so it doesn't affect your credit. While the Department of Education and the credit bureaus, which are a completely separate entity, sort out how that's going to work. I have yet to find any specific information as to how the on-ramp period is supposed to work. I don't know. The minute I find it, I will tell you. But I wouldn't wait around on them because, again, this is the same Department of Education that extended the student loans for 3 years, but always 2 weeks, a month before. They like to play with people's emotions, truthfully. That was always my biggest issue in the past 3 years of, hey, just let me know in advance. Because I don't like the up and the down, the up and the down, the up and the down. So make sure that you put into your budget, because it's coming up in a couple days, how much your minimum payment is. Also, if you have recently gotten laid off, unfortunately, you can sign up for an income-driven repayment plan. The SAVE plan is income-driven repayment. It will automatically put your payment at $0. To note, just because your payment is $0, that has nothing to do with your interest. Your interest will still accrue. However, in the meantime, while you're trying to figure out everything else, it will at least give you a buffer to where you don't owe the money. The biggest thing I think that's really important to know is how much is your interest accruing. If you can, make the full payment of what the interest is. My interest rates range for the last 3 student loans, range from 6.5%, I believe, to 7.21%. They are really high. In order to get my interest to be lower, I have to refinance them with a private company, which is what I'm about to do, truthfully. Something that we've talked about numerous times, and because we can't say it enough times, to be honest, student loans come from going to school. One of the things, sadly, that is going around in this country is school book bans on various books from Toni Morrison. A teacher was recently reprimanded and reported by her students in South Carolina for teaching in her English literature class about Ta-Nehisi Coates. And a lot of books on Black history, on the Black experience, as well as books about gender, race, and things of that nature are now being banned in schools. That is not helping the kids. That is foolishness. We should be able, first of all, to live in a country that wants everybody to know the facts of how the hell this country was built. And also, specifically in the state of Florida man, the one Florida man, Governor DeSantis, has now decided that he is including in the Florida school curriculum that the practice of chattel slavery actually taught enslaved people in this country transferable skills. That is a blatant lie. There is no truth in that. So if you have the time, I highly recommend going to the PTA meeting and making your voice be heard, because our children deserve to learn the truth. The truth is good for people. You can't. What is the quote? A lot of history teachers always quote this: you're destined to repeat history if you don't learn from history. Yeah. And quite frankly, I don't want to live through a repeat of that history. Personally, don't. Unsubscribe immediately. Speaking of, people that just like to do the wrong thing, because I guess it gives them giggles, many members of the Republican Party in both the House of Representatives and Congress have moved to cancel Biden's student loan SAVE plan. My biggest issues with the SAVE plan are that it doesn't address the largest issue, which is interest. With the SAVE plan, no matter what payment you make, so mine is $830.50. That is what my interest is. If my minimum payment is $500, according to the SAVE plan, in July of 2024, we're doing quick math, that $330.50 left over from the interest that I technically wouldn't cover if I only made a minimum payment of $500 would not then get tacked onto my principal balance. That's great. However, a better method would be to address the high interest rates. If we capped interest rates at 2 or 3%, then I would be able to make a large payment, and that payment would cover not only the interest, but also the principal payment. What a lot of these Republicans are doing is they're saying the SAVE plan as a whole is sneaking in student loan forgiveness, and they're trying to get the SAVE plan as a whole canceled, which is nefarious and which is foolishness, because that's not what it's doing. However, don't be alarmed if you see this in the headlines. Most likely, if this were to even pass in the House of Representatives and Congress, Biden will most likely veto this. So it's something to just see, but not to let raise your blood pressure. The only thing that should really, unfortunately raise your blood pressure is the interest rates. And the way that we are all going to collectively lower our blood pressure, in my opinion, if it fits your financial situation, is refinancing. So repeating this again, I say this every time I bring up student loan refinancing. If you're doing public service loan forgiveness, PSLF, do not refinance your loans. The minute you refinance, you can't do PSLF. You have to have federal loans to do PSLF. PSLF is for public servants. So if you are a teacher, if you are a lawyer that works for any governmental agency, for example, those types of things, after 10 years, you can get your student loans forgiven. Do not refinance your loans. If you work in the private sector, if you work for yourself, etc., and aren't a government contractor. I'm not sure about how it works for government contractors, so you should look that up if you're a government contractor specifically. Refinancing might help you. I will be refinancing my loans this week. I'm going to do mine one at a time, to be honest, just in case a little forgiveness, sneaks in my way so that I can get them. I have 3 remaining loans. The purpose of refinancing the loan is to lower your interest rates. Unfortunately, the interest rates are still a little high. I started perusing around. Right now, most refinancing companies are giving anywhere from 4.8% to like 5.5%. That's still better than my 7.21%. 3% would have been the best. One thing to note, you can refinance your student loans as many times as you want. So that's what I plan on doing. I'm going to refinance it once and then probably maybe 6 months later, refinance it again until I get the lowest possible interest rate. Because that's my goal. My goal is to pay down the actual money I borrowed, not the mother effing interest. Deep breaths. Deep breaths. Deep breaths. That's $75,000 I done paid off that I didn't borrow. Oh Lord. I'm going to do this probably this week, so it'll be in the October student loan video, a play-by-play on how to refinance your student loans. There are like 5 different companies I'm looking at. They all seem equally good. I've had friends that have refinanced their loans as well. Some of them will give you $500 to refinance with that certain company. I'm basically looking at anybody except for SoFi, to be honest, and anybody with a good, reputable track record, and whoever has the lowest interest rate. That's the main thing. When you refinance your loans, one thing to note, your minimum payment is significantly higher than with income-driven repayment under your federal loans. So that's something to factor into your budget. So that's why I'm doing mine one at a time. If I were to refinance all 3, my minimum payment will give me anxiety. I pay more than the minimum payment anyway, but that's not the point. I don't want a $2,000 bill a month. I really don't. The idea of that seems stressful. So what will happen is you can refinance 1, you can refinance none, you can refinance 1.5. It's a set amount of, it's the amount that you refinance. So we will go through all of that. So on that note, we kind of talked about the feelings anyway, but how are y'all feeling? Personally, I don't know. This student loan repayment, as somebody who's been repaying them for the past 3 years, it's always up and down. You know, sometimes you're just like, it is what it is. I'm paying it off. And then sometimes you get a little aggy about it. And then sometimes you get into the despair of this really isn't fair, which is kind of where I'm at. Because paying $100 and what are we at paid? Estimated $154,000 paid. It's more than that. And the reason why it's estimated is because I wasn't tracking the first 2 years that I started paying the loans, like the minimum payments. This is when I started officially being like, hey, I'm going to tackle these in February 14th of 2020. That's when I made a plan to be like, okay, I'm going to tackle my full student loans. I was paying my student loans before that, but they were getting the minimum payment, truthfully. And after paying off so much money in 3 years, it's a little demoralizing, to be honest, to still owe 6 figures. It's a little irritating. It's kind of like, what was the reason? You know? But here I am, paying them off. And if I end up in corporate, truthfully, truth be told, if I end up back in corporate, it'll solely be to pay off my student loans. Because I think just getting rid of them once and for all will just give me the ability to just breathe a little bit, because they are the number one thing standing in the way of a lot of things I want to do with my life. And ignoring your loans, because I have plenty of friends, plenty of people I know, they're like, I'm just going to ignore them. I'm just going to die with them. I don't think that's a good idea, truthfully. It messes up your credit if you don't pay them. But also, if you ever want to buy a house, which, child, buy a house in this economy, that's a whole different conversation about inflation and those interest rates. But if you ever want to make a large purchase, they look at your debt to income ratio. So it's better to tackle it even as hard as that is. But yeah, that's where I am. That's where I am. Your girl is trying. That's all I can do is give it a good old fashioned try. So I will catch y'all later in the week. All right. Bye. Also, a huge shout out to all of my Patreon members. I appreciate y'all. And a special shout out to Judy, Juanita, David, and Courtney. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.